Welcome to Global English Tales. Today, we bring you an inspirational story that will not only motivate you but also help you improve your English skills. As you listen, pay attention to the simple sentences and vocabulary. These will help you understand grammar and enhance your speaking and writing skills. This story is designed to teach you important lessons while making it easy for you to follow along. Whether you're just starting to learn English or looking to improve, you'll find that every story is an opportunity to expand your language skills. So, sit back, enjoy the story, and let's learn English together through this powerful and inspiring journey. The Mountain Climber. James was a young man who lived in a small village near a tall mountain. The mountain was known for being very difficult to climb. People in the village often talked about it, and James always dreamed of reaching the top. Every time he looked at the mountain, he felt a strong desire to climb it. However, there was a problem. James was afraid. He did not think he was strong enough to climb such a high and dangerous mountain. Many people in the village had tried to climb it and failed, but James could not let go of his dream. He spent many nights staring at the mountain, imagining what it would be like to stand at the top. He wondered what it would feel like to see the world from above and prove that he could do something that others thought was impossible. The more he thought about it, the more the dream grew inside him. One day, James decided to talk to his father about it. His father was an old and wise man who had lived through many challenges. When James told him about his dream, his father smiled. He said, "If you want to climb the mountain, you must be brave. But more than that, you must believe in yourself." His father's words filled James with hope. He knew that his father had faced many difficulties in life, and if anyone could offer advice, it was him. James felt a sense of calm. He now knew that the only way to conquer his fear was to face it head-on. That day, he promised himself that he would climb the mountain, no matter the obstacles. James thought long and hard about what his father had said. He realized that his fear was holding him back, but his desire to climb the mountain was stronger. The next morning, he made a decision. He was going to try. James had always been a hardworking person, but this was something different. This was a challenge that tested not only his body but also his heart and mind. He had never done anything this difficult before, but the thought of standing on the mountain top filled him with excitement and courage. With each passing hour, his resolve grew stronger. He packed a bag with food, water, and extra clothing, preparing for the unknown. James began to prepare. He packed food, water, and clothes for the climb. He was nervous, but he knew he had to start. With each step he took toward the mountain, his heart raced. The path up the mountain was not easy. It was steep and rocky. James felt tired after only a few hours, but he kept going. He told himself that he could not give up now. He had made the decision to climb, and he would not stop until he reached the top. As he climbed higher, the air grew thinner, and his body began to feel the strain. But he was determined to reach the summit. James had been climbing for days. His legs ached, and the air was thin. He was starting to feel weak. One morning, a heavy snowstorm hit. The wind howled and the snow covered the path. James could hardly see in front of him. He felt a deep chill in his bones. It was hard to keep moving when everything around him seemed to be against him. He thought about turning back. It was dangerous, and he had already come so far. But then he remembered what his father had said. "You must believe in yourself." He took a deep breath and decided to keep going. The storm lasted for hours, but James stayed strong. He focused on each step, even though the snow made it hard to see. He knew that the storm would eventually end, and he would be able to continue. When the snow finally stopped, he looked around. Everything was covered in white, and the path ahead was even harder to follow. But James did not let that stop him. He continued on, reminding himself that challenges were a part of the journey. He was learning that sometimes, the hardest moments bring the greatest growth. With each step, he felt more capable and stronger. James had been climbing for weeks now. He was tired and his strength was fading. One night, he sat on a rock and looked at the mountain. It seemed so far away, and he wondered if he could make it to the top. He felt alone and small compared to the huge mountain. The nights were cold, and the days felt long. He had never been this far from home before, and the journey was starting to take a toll on him. For the first time since he started, James thought about giving up. Maybe this was too much for him. Maybe he was not strong enough to finish what he had started. But then he remembered all the people in the village who had failed before him. He thought of how much they admired the mountain, and he did not want to be another person who could not finish what he started. With new determination, James stood up. He wiped the tears from his eyes and took the already taught him so much about his own strength. The doubts were just part of the process. If he could push through this moment, he knew he could finish the climb. One day, as James climbed higher, he met another traveler. The man was old and tired, but he was still determined to keep going. James asked the man how long he had been climbing. The old man replied that he had been climbing the mountain for many years, always trying to reach the top but never succeeding. James felt sympathy for the man, but also a sense of respect. It was clear that he had tried many times, but he had not given up. The old man smiled at James and said, "Sometimes the journey is more important than the destination." James listened carefully to the man's words. The old man had not reached the top, but his spirit had not been broken. James realized that it was not about the summit, but the strength gained through the journey. The mountain was not just a challenge for the body, but for the mind. The old man's story gave James new courage. It reminded him that even if the climb was difficult, the lessons learned were worth the struggle. The old man gave James advice before they parted ways. He said, "The mountain will test you in many ways, but if you keep your spirit strong, you will reach the top." These words stayed with James as he continued his climb. They helped him through the hardest moments, reminding him that he was not alone in his struggle. James had been climbing for almost 2 months. He was tired, but he was also excited. The summit was so close. He could see the top in the distance, and it felt like a dream. But the path to the top was dangerous. The rocks were sharp, and the wind was strong. James knew this would be the hardest part of the climb, but he also knew that he could do it. He had already come so far, and it would be a shame to turn back now. With each step, he felt his body growing weaker, but his mind stayed strong. He reminded himself of the lessons he had learned and the people who believed in him. Finally, after what felt like hours, James reached the top. He looked around and saw the entire world below him. He had done it. The mountain had been hard, but he had conquered it. And in doing so, he had conquered his own fears. The view from the top was breathtaking, and James felt an overwhelming sense of accomplishment. He took a moment to let it sink in, knowing that this was a victory not just for his body, but for his spirit. After spending a few days at the top, James began his descent. He was exhausted, but he was also proud. When he returned to the village, everyone was waiting for him. They had heard of his success and could not wait to hear his story. James smiled and told them about his journey. He spoke of the challenges he faced, the people he met, and the lessons he had learned. The villagers listened with awe. James had done what many thought was impossible. But James did not think he was special. He told the villagers, "If I can do it, you can too." The mountain was difficult, but it taught me that anything is possible if you never give up. The people in the village were inspired. They saw that with determination, anyone could achieve their dreams. James had shown them that there were no limits to what they could accomplish. The mountain was no longer just a place to climb. It had become a symbol of hope for everyone. James realized that the journey was more than just about climbing a mountain. It had taught him many lessons: to never give up, to be strong, and to believe in himself. These were the lessons he would carry with him for the rest of his life. He became a teacher in the village, sharing what he had learned. The children listened to his stories and looked up to him. They wanted to be like James and face their own challenges with courage. The village began to change. People no longer saw obstacles as things that could stop them. Instead, They saw them as opportunities to grow stronger. And it was all because of James' journey up the mountain. James helped the villagers build their confidence. He encouraged them to face their own mountains, whatever they might be. The lessons James had learned on the mountain became the foundation for the village's future. It was not just about climbing mountains, it was about overcoming anything that stood in their way. James was proud to see the village grow stronger with each passing year. His journey had made a lasting impact on everyone around him. Years passed, and James became a respected figure in the village. He had become a symbol of perseverance and hope. People often came to him for advice, whether they were struggling with personal challenges or needed encouragement to pursue their dreams. James always told them the same thing: the mountain is not just a physical challenge, it is a test of your spirit. One day, a young boy named Max approached James. Max had heard the stories of James' climb and was inspired by them. He wanted to climb a mountain of his own, but he was afraid. He told James, "I am scared, but I want to try." James smiled at him and said, "I understand your fear. I was once afraid too. But if you believe in yourself and keep moving forward, you will find strength you never knew you had." Max nodded, encouraged by James' words. That day, James promised to help Max prepare for his own journey. The village was proud of Max, just as they had been proud of James. They watched as he trained, prepared, and gathered the courage to start his climb. James often went with Max to the foot of the mountain to guide him, just as his father had guided him all those years ago. The cycle of inspiration continued. As time went on, the story of James' climb became a legend. It was told not only in the village but in nearby towns as well. People came from all over to hear about the mountain climber, who had faced the impossible and succeeded. James was no longer the young man who had first set out to conquer the mountain. He had grown older and wiser, but his heart still burned with the same passion for overcoming challenges. He knew that his story had inspired others to follow their dreams, just as it had inspired Max and many others before him. Max's journey became a new chapter in the story of the mountain. He faced his own struggles and doubts, but with each day, he grew stronger. James watched proudly as Max climbed higher, knowing that the legacy of courage and perseverance was being passed on. The village became known far and wide as a place of inspiration. People came from all over to learn from James and the others who had taken on the challenge of the mountain. They came not just to hear about the climb, but to experience the spirit of resilience that had transformed the village. James knew that the mountain was not just a physical place. It represented the challenges that everyone faces in life, no matter how big or small. The mountain stood for the obstacles that could only be overcome by strength, determination, and belief in oneself. One evening, as James sat by the fire, he thought back on everything he had been through. The climb had not only changed him physically, but it had shaped his entire life. He thought of the young man who had once been too afraid to climb. He had come so far since then. James knew that his greatest accomplishment was not the climb itself, but the way it had transformed his heart. The mountain had taught him that true strength comes from within. It was not about the peak or the view, but about the person you become along the way. Now, as he sat by the fire, surrounded by friends and family, he felt peace in his heart. He had done something he once thought was impossible, and in doing so, he had learned the most important lesson of all. You are capable of more than you think. Looking up at the stars, James realized that there would always be new mountains to climb. But he was no longer afraid. He knew that no matter what challenges came his way, he would face them with the same courage and strength that had carried him up the mountain all those years ago. As the seasons changed, so did the village. New families moved in, and new challenges arose. But the spirit of courage and perseverance lived on. James' story continued to inspire not just the villagers but everyone who heard it. Max, now a young man, had become a mentor to others who wanted to climb the mountain. He had taken on the role that James had once held, guiding the next generation. He told them the same things James had told him. Believe in yourself, never give up, And remember that the journey is just as important as the destination. The mountain was still there, towering over the village. But it was no longer a symbol of fear or danger. It was a symbol of hope and possibility. Anyone who looked at the mountain now saw a challenge that could be conquered, not a barrier that would keep them down. James had started something that could not be stopped. His climb had inspired not only a village but a community of people who believed in themselves and their dreams. And as long as the mountain stood, there would always be someone willing to face it and overcome it. As the years passed, James' hair turned gray, and his steps became slower. But his spirit remained as strong as ever. He continued to share his story, teaching others how to face their fears and pursue their dreams. One day, as James walked to the foot of the mountain for the last time, he felt a deep sense of fulfillment. He had climbed the mountain not just once but many times. Each time he had learned something new, and each time he had become stronger. James sat down on a rock, looking up at the summit. He knew that the climb was over for him, but it would never truly end. The mountain would always be there, and so would the lessons it had taught him. He smiled, knowing that his story would live on in the hearts of those who had been inspired by it. As the sun set behind the mountain, James took one last look at the peak. He felt at peace, knowing that the mountain had given him everything he needed. The climb had not been just about reaching the top, but about discovering the strength and courage that lay within. And in that moment, James knew that he had truly reached the summit of his life. Epilogue. The mountain continued to stand tall, its peak touching the sky. It was no longer just a challenge for climbers, but a symbol of the human spirit's ability to overcome anything. And as new generations came and went, the lessons of James' climb continued to inspire people from all walks of life. The village flourished, and its people grew stronger, knowing that no matter what obstacles they faced, they had the courage to keep going. The mountain was no longer just a place, it was a legacy of determination, strength, and the belief that no challenge was too great to overcome. James' journey had shown everyone that the greatest victories are not always about winning, but about finding the strength to keep moving forward. And so, the story of the mountain climber lived on, passed down from one generation to the next, inspiring all who heard it to climb their own mountains. Thank you so much for watching. We hope you enjoyed today's story and found it both inspiring and helpful in your English learning journey. Remember, every story is a chance to learn new words, understand grammar, and improve your English skills. If you found this video useful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Global English Tales. Also, hit the bell icon so you never miss a new story or lesson. Keep practicing, keep learning, and stay motivated. We'll be back with more stories to help you grow your English skills. See you in the next video.